Welcome everybody again to the TitleFight.com roundtable here. Got your boy Gordy Tamar on the line here with Big Steve. And we got Brandon Stubbs here. We're going to be chopping it up over a couple different fights on the landscape here. So fellas, last night we got to see an interesting bout up here between a couple bantamweights here. 2012's Fighter of the Year, Nonito Donaire, who took on Cuban sensation here, Guillermo Rigondeaux, last night at Radio City. Brandon, what are your overall thoughts on this? There's been a lot of buzz circulating on social media here today and last night, pro and con here, about how the performance was, but what are your take on the fight?
It seemed that Donaire just was ill-prepared. Not to take anything away from Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux fought a tremendous fight, had a great game plan, but Donaire just seemed out of it. He couldn't seem to pull the trigger. Just didn't really seem to be all there mentally and ready for the fight when the bell rung.
Okay. You know, a couple things that were circling. I was just on the phone earlier, actually texting back and forth with one of our other guys, Heath Harlem, and he mentioned something I was thinking too, that maybe people aren't really giving Rigondeaux credit about this, but I almost seen a little bit of Bernard Hopkins in this guy. I mean, didn't really care about how flashy he looked. He was very vocal about that. He came out to get the job done and vocally said they really didn't care about looking pretty. He's out there to win. Steve, what's your take on his whole demeanor about his game plan coming in, just making sure he gets the W?
Well, he's a very defensive fighter. The amateur background, served him well. The professional style, a lot of the Cubans, they're very slick. They're very basic. None of them are real exciting. They're very difficult to fight. Just the way that he was brought up, the style that he was trained in, they're basic 1-2, jab, move, try to hit, not get hit. And so he's not a real fan-friendly fighter. I knew that going in there. And I knew that this was going to be a dull fight. I expected Nonito to put up a better fight than that and possibly score a knockout, or at least, make it a lot closer fight than it was. I give Rigondeaux all the credit in the world. He fought an excellent fight, did not let Nonito get into his game plan, pop shot at him all night. And there were times when you thought Nonito was hurt and was going to be out of there, or he was going to get caught. So a great win for Rigondeaux. Nonito was very gracious in defeat. He was very classy, kind of reminded me of Alexis Arguello in his day. So I wouldn't want to see them fight each other again. They should just both move on. Nonito, said he had a shoulder injury that he needs to have surgery on. I hope he gets that fixed and then moves up in weight.
I don't think there was a rematch clause either in there, so don't think maybe either one of them would be chasing a rematch here. Donaire obviously has a lot on his plate with the new baby around the corner here, and he's made some pretty good paydays, and maybe he's going to be taking a break for a minute there. Couldn't help but notice Oscar De La Hoya tweeting last night saying you should have taken the $3 million, and he was referencing to Donaire with that whole deal. But what's on the landscape, Brandon? What do you think's on the landscape here for both of these guys going forward?
Well, I really look for Donaire to actually move up to 126, and the name already floating around. It was kind of even floating around before this fight as a match with Juan Lopez, who's also kind of under the top rate banner. As far as Rigondeaux goes, I really have no clue. You also have to look at it like this. With the kind of a performance he put on last night, is HBO going to really want to pony up big money to continue to have him on the air? Is he going to be doing undercard bouts as being maybe a co-feature on pay-per-views for Top Rank? That's a big question. And as far as, Admiral Mares goes and De La Hoya sending out tweets, we already know there's going to be no kind of fighting between anyone from Top Rank and Golden Boy. So it's going to really be up to Top Rank to see what they can kind of pull together for Rigondeaux and see if there's anything they can build around to where it can make a fan-friendly, television-friendly fight to what people would want to see. If not, it's going to be a hard sell really to kind of push him as being one of those upper echelon fighters just because of the style.
True. Very true, very true. I mean, they are trying to push to the casual boxing fans, and doesn't have the most fan-friendly style that can maybe sell a ticket that way. Moving on, we got another interesting matchup coming up here that's official now for June 29th versus Gennady Golovkin and Matthew Macklin coming up. Some interesting comments that Macklin was throwing out there here during an official presser here was telling the crowd, hey, he bleeds like everybody else, but for the first time in his career, he's going to be stepping in against a world-class proper middleweight. Everybody has been painting out Gennady to be this monster who's just knocking everybody out left and right here. How do you see this fight playing out, Brenton?
This should be very interesting. I mean, Macklin's someone who's actually going to be able to pressure it. Actually, he has a punch because he's going to try to bring the fight to Triple G, which I think is going to be kind of a smart thing to do. We saw Rosario do that, Dave Rosario in a fight here a couple of months ago against Triple G. When he tried to pressure him, he was able to hit him and able to tag him. He just didn't have the power behind his punches to do real damage. If Macklin can actually do that, apply pressure and attempt tagging, I mean, he has a chance, but he also has to take into account when you're going reckless with a guy like Triple G who is just so skilled. It should be a really interesting bout. Definitely something I'm looking forward to.
There's been some interesting talking here, Steve. I know you got a chance to throw out some questions during the conference call for Canelo-Trout, and Brandon, you were listening on the line as well. Canelo vowed revenge for his brother who lost to Trout, and also inking that rematch clause that kind of had some people throwing out some quips out there about that as well. The Road Warrior here, Trout, he's vowing to capture that other strap and claim another Alvarez victim here. Steve, do you think that Canelo is worried about Trout, and that's possibly part of the reason for the rematch clause there, or is this just business as usual?
Probably a little bit of both. I think, he knows that he's not in with a stiff with Austin Trout. He's not a fighter that's moving up in weight or a fighter that's past his prime. A true junior middleweight in his prime, that's no joke. So he's just protecting his backside just in case he loses this fight, because it is a losable fight for him. Trout's going in there with no fear. He can go in there and then try and spoil the party like he's done for other fighters. So it's just business as usual for him.
Right. Good stuff. And what do you think? What do you think, Brandon? I mean, is this more of just business as well, or do you think that he actually has something to kind of worry about with Trout, and that's part of the reason why they had that rematch clause in there? Mind you, Trout obviously didn't have that same benefit. There's no rematch clause if Trout happens to lose.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really unfair to Trout. I mean, he even said that on his end on the conference call. And something else he said that I thought was poignant is that, his people have faith in him, but it seems that Golden Boy and maybe some of the people there in Canelo's promotion didn't have faith. They really didn't want this fight to happen. It was Canelo who pretty much overruled them and said, yeah, I want this fight. So Golden Boy and Canelo's promotional team, they're just kind of protecting their backside and saying, okay, we really don't want this fight. We know there's a chance he could lose. We got to have this clause if we're going to make it happen. I mean, it really hats off for Trout to even accepting that being a part of the contract, being a part of the clause, because he kind of knows he's kind of painted in a corner. I mean, he's kind of in a catch-22. Sure, he beats him, but then he's got to go right back out and beat him again, really to validate himself as far as Golden Boy is concerned. I do think it's a real losable fight for Canelo. I really think if Trout goes out and boxes the way he did against Cotto, there's no way Canelo can beat him. I think he's got to pitch a perfect game in this regards, because down there in Texas, Lord knows what kind of judging is going to happen. But if he kind of has the same fight and this fights the same tenacity he did against Cotto, I think he can easily come out with the W.
This last week we got to see the premiere of All Access for Mayweather versus Guerrero coming up right around the corner here. And, I was pleased myself to hear hip-hop artist Common as the narrator for it. He did a pretty good job, I thought, there. We got to see a little bit of the behind-the-scenes stuff with Mayweather going on here. Obviously, he had to throw in the strippers and the booty shaking and all that there, but got to capture a glimpse of some of Mayweather's lifestyle, and then capping it off with, Guerrero going off in cuffs here, so kind of leaves people wondering what's coming down the pipe here this week. Brandon, what were your thoughts on that premiere that just released?
It was interesting. I mean, it seemed like it was missing something compared to what we've seen in the past with Mayweather on the HBO series, the 24/7s, leading up to his fight. I was expecting to hear more from Uncle Roger and Floyd Sr., but maybe that'll come as the episodes progress. But it'll be interesting to see how Showtime actually executes and shows what happens with Guerrero, or especially the days after the whole gun thing. If they really go into it, if it's talked about. Be interested to see if there's any reaction from Floyd here on the next episode, if he says anything about it. It'll be real interesting to see. If nothing is said, it's going to be kind of a head-scratcher if they're just trying to be a little bit conservative. But overall, not bad, but it just seems like it's just missing something that the 24/7s had there from HBO.
You guys, one fight that we really haven't touched base on, and maybe it's kind of flown under the radar a little bit, maybe for one reason or another, but same night that Canelo-Trout's going down here, we got Fury versus Cunningham, and Fury's kind of being painted up as that Goliath heavyweight as well, maybe just good public relations, or maybe it's true, but what do you think his chances are of coming stateside and making a huge splash here against Cunningham, or is he going to end up more along the lines as David Price ended up getting, layered out on the floor there and having to go back over the pond and rebuild himself? Steve, what do you think on this one?
It should be a decent scrap. Cunningham's out to prove a lot. Ever since he was robbed this last December against Adam Meck on national TV. He's coming back to fight on national television, and I think he's going to go out there and make a statement and prove, he belongs up there with the elite of the heavyweight division.
And Brandon, what's your thoughts on this one?
I completely agree there with Steve. It's going to be interesting to see how Cunningham reacts, being back on television after just pretty much just getting jobbed over in the Adam Meck fight. Fury, huge heavyweight, huge guy, but who has he fought? And really in this case, he has a lot to lose on this. He's fighting a guy who's kind of an undersized heavyweight in Cunningham, who's a legit cruiserweight, but not really a heavyweight. He's fighting on the stateside for the first time. I mean, he loses here, where does he go? This could be a win here, and especially in a very flashy state. If he doesn't, a very dominant performance, could really build things for him here over on the stateside. But if he goes out and drops a dud, he's done. He's going to be back over fighting in line shows over in the UK, and the U.S. boxing fans could care less about him. So, he's got a lot riding on this. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes out, and really interesting to see how Cunningham comes out after the Adam Meck fight, and see if he fights with a little bit more anger, if he's a little bit more aggressive, to make sure he doesn't leave in the judges' hands.
Right on. Well, hey, fight fans, we want to thank you once again for tuning in here to TheTitleFight.com. Until next time.